So, several years ago, when my grandson Sam was little, we went to a neighborhood playground. It was a beautiful summer evening. There was about 20 kids playing. Their families were watching. Everything seemed perfect. And then I felt a hand on my shoulder, and a woman looked me in the eye and said, "Oh my God, is there a cure?" I'm thinking, for what? For baldness? No. Not that I know of, but keep me posted. So here I am, having a wonderful time, and all of a sudden, I need to be cured of something. You know what happened. She didn't see a person. She didn't see a human. She saw a wheelchair with some life form sitting in it. We've all had that experience, right? Being seen for the color of our skin, or where we live, or what we've done, or what we think, or where we pray. We've all had that experience. That's not who we are. Unfortunately, we see ourselves that way also. We see ourselves as victims of trauma, victims of injury, victims of neglect. I had a man come to my office and tell me that when he was 7 years old, he knew. When he was 7 years old, he knew he had to raise himself. His father was a drug addict and in prison. His mother was working 2 jobs. She was never around. He knew when he was 7. So he closed his heart, did what he needed to do to survive his childhood. I met him 40 years later, and his heart had been closed for 40 years. And in those 40 years, he'd never experienced a loving relationship. He'd never felt loved. He'd never allowed himself to love. That's not who we are. There's one other thing that closes a heart, and that's shame. At least that's what closed my heart. By the time I was 7, 8 years old, I started to fail in school. And back then, there were no learning disabilities. So we were either lazy or stupid. I knew I wasn't lazy because I really was trying. Just figured I was not very bright. And so I lied. I lied to my friends about my grades. I felt so ashamed. I didn't feel part of my group anymore. I felt like I was a lie. Then in 7th grade, I got a teacher I idolized. He was the first adult that believed in me, that believed I could make something of myself. I would have followed him anywhere. Unfortunately, I did. And a couple of months later, I found myself in his bed, being molested. More shame, more to hide. I believed that if I did all the right things, if I pretended I was smarter than I was, more competent than I was, pretended I was stronger than I was, happier than I was, if I wore that mask, I would actually be that mask one day. That's not who we are. I'll tell you who we are. It's about who we were. There's a lot of studies out now about infants and toddlers. These things are born with loving hearts. We know that, right? They love easily. They love fearlessly. They love shamelessly. They love often. They love anybody. And we love them. They invite love. We can't not love infants. Can't do it. You watch an infant that giggles, your heart's going to open. One other thing we know about infants is that they are compassionate. Studies have shown that when an infant in daycare cries, the others will crawl up to that baby as if to comfort them, even when the adult in that room cries. Infants will crawl up. We are born with loving hearts and hearts of compassion. It's in there. It's in our hardwiring. But what happens to us? What happens to those loving hearts? It's like I said, like that man whose heart's been closed for 4 decades. How we see ourselves as victims. How I wore that mask. I hid behind that mask all those years. Always believing, always having hope that I would be that person I thought I should be. And then on December 20th, 1979, I kissed my wife and 2 precious babies goodbye, walked across the frozen lawn to get into my car to go to work. And those would be the last steps I would ever take. 2 hours later, a tire flew off a truck and broke my neck. And for the rest of my life, I'd be paralyzed from my chest down. A few days later, I woke up in intensive care, realizing what happened to me. Realizing that mask was forever shattered. That mask, that hope that I would ever be the person I thought I could be or should be, never again. I was shattered in body and spirit. I was useless and worthless. I didn't think I wanted to live. After all, I was going to be a burden to my family, a burden to the world. I didn't know if I deserved to live. A couple of nights later, I was in intensive care, and a nurse came up to me and asked if she could talk to me. And of course, I said yes. I didn't have any appointments at the moment. I wasn't feeling so playful back then. And she talked to me about her broken heart. She didn't know if she could go on because of her losses and her suffering. And you know what? She didn't care that I was a failure. She didn't care that I had been abused. She didn't care that my body was shattered. She only cared about her broken heart. And you know what? For the first time, I didn't care about those things either. I just cared about her. I felt that loving compassion that we all feel when we're babies. And at the end, she thanked me. I closed my eyes, and I said to myself, I can live with this. She showed me by having the courage to utter 3 words, please help me. She showed me that my life could have value. Those 3 words. Nevertheless, the ensuing 4 or 5 years was just awful. I'd been near death several times. My beloved sister and confidant died of a brain tumor. My wife, who held my hand every day through this nightmare, decided she had to leave this marriage. And a couple of years later, she died. I went into a very deep and very dark depression. And one night at work, I was getting ready to go home, and I thought, I wonder if I'm going to drive off a bridge on my way home. I didn't, by the way. When I got home, I knew it was time. It's time to make up my mind. So I had a conversation with, I don't know, my higher power, my inner truth, and I said, okay, I'll live with this, but give me hope that one day I'll walk again. And I heard, no hope, Dan, live or die. Then give me hope that I won't suffer this much. I won't be so sick. No hope, Dan, live or die. This was my confrontation. Choose this life with this body, with this history, with this uncertain future that almost guarantees pain and suffering. Choose this life or don't. Well, you know what I chose. And why? Not because I'm strong or a hero of some type. Given the choice between life and death, living beings choose life. That's what we do. So, here I was. My mask was shattered. I had no hope of becoming who I thought I should be. I had no choice but to become the person I am. I always was. That was my second chance, to become who I am. It was not my choice to be there. It was my chance to become who I am. But I had no roadmap. I had no mentors. I had no guidance. How do I do this? A couple days later, I had a dream that God came to me. And he said, Dan, I'm going to give you a piece of the universe. And your job is to take care of it. Don't make it bigger or better. Just to take care of it. And he said, when I'm ready, I'll take it back and your life will be over. And I woke up and my mind immediately went to that nurse several years earlier who had the courage to say those 3 words to me. Please help me. And I knew what my life was going to be about. To look in people's eyes, not like that woman in the park, but to look in their eyes and see their humanity and wonder in my mind, how can I help you today? That my life was about having the courage to utter those 3 words, to look in someone's eyes and say, please help me. And who knows, not only would I get the help I need, but it could change someone else's life. That's what we need, right? We need that kind of connection. So, what opens a closed heart that may have been closed forever? Simple kindness and compassion. That's all. And that begins to open a heart that may have been closed your whole life. One other thing. That's love. Love is the mother's milk of the human soul. Love is the difference between a lifetime of happiness and misery. Love is the difference between well-being and alienation. And we all know how to do it. We knew, might have cobwebs on it. What stops us from loving? Fear of getting hurt, fear of being ashamed, fear of being rejected. Love is the domain of the courageous. Love who you love. And by the way, we know that it doesn't matter whether the love is coming in or going out. It just doesn't matter. Either way, changes your brain chemistry and changes your wiring. Either way, it changes the way you fit into the world. It doesn't matter whether you're doing the loving or receiving it. So, look around the room, in your mind or directly. Make eye contact with the people in the room. Make eye contact with the people in your life. And you'll see people who suffer. You'll see people who worry, who stay awake at night, who have a critical judge. You'll see people who just want to be accepted and loved for who they are. People who want more love in their lives. People who need care. So, when the mask is shattered and you no longer have hope of becoming the person you think you should be, you might discover a tender, loving, compassionate heart that's been waiting for you your whole life. Thank you, everyone.